Welcome to Auto News Talk. So glad to have you with us for this one. I was thinking about this analogy, and imagine you decide to renovate your house,
Okay, yeah, I follow you.
and you blow your entire budget on this bleeding-edge, voice-activated smart home system. I mean, you wire the walls, you install the servers, you spare absolutely no expense.
He's just going all out.
Exactly. But you completely ignore the fact that the roof is leaking, the foundation is cracking, and, well, you don't even have a comfortable place to sit down.
That's a pretty rough house to live in.
Yeah, and that is exactly what is happening in the automotive industry, but on a multi-billion-dollar scale. Automakers took these massive gambles on building the vehicles of the future, and the reality of the market is aggressively pulling the rug out from under them.
It really is a brutal collision between, visionary strategy and just basic market reality. And what we are tracking here on Auto News Talk is this systemic strain that's stretching across the entire automotive value chain.
It's everywhere.
It is. If you want to understand the terrain we are walking through, you have to look past the sheet metal. We're going to trace a domino effect.
Okay, where does the first domino fall?
We will start at the very top, looking at boardroom capital allocations and the physical human realities on the factory floor.
Right.
Then we are going all the way down to the microchips being physically embedded into the dashboards. And finally, we're looking at the actual software your local dealership is using to finance the whole thing.
So it's really the story of an industry desperately trying to leap into the future while anchored to the ground by these heavy, expensive legacy realities.
Precisely.
I want to start with that capital allocation piece because you can't just unspend billions of dollars. If automakers poured all this cash into electrification, I have to assume it disrupted their normal day-to-day operations.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how badly did this pivot cannibalize the cars that actually pay their bills?
Severely. I mean, there's an analysis featured on a bonus episode of Cox Automotive's The Auto Market Brief podcast, and it points out that automakers completely misjudged the transition timeline.
Just got it totally wrong.
Yeah, by diverting billions of dollars to battery technology and EV platforms, they essentially starved their traditional vehicle pipelines. That massive capital allocation directly led to delayed or, in some cases, entirely canceled internal combustion engine programs.
Wow.
And because of that, the industry is seeing some of the lowest redesign rates in decades.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit. Weren't these automakers just doing what the market demanded? I mean, investors were treating any company that wasn't pivoting to EVs like the next blockbuster video.
They were absolutely under immense pressure from investors. But the fatal flaw was abandoning the core business prematurely.
Right.
John Murphy, the founder of Murphy Automotive Partners, was on that Cox Automotive podcast, and he used a brilliant phrase for this. He called it an EV head fake.
An EV head fake.
Yeah. The market signaled a massive, immediate shift to electric. The automakers bit hard on the fake, and they are just completely out of position.
That paints a perfect picture, honestly. But if you are a consumer if you're out there shopping for a car, why does it matter if a traditional gas-powered SUV hasn't been redesigned in 6 years?
Because consumers are keeping their vehicles longer, and, well, affordability is a massive hurdle. In a tight market, fresh redesigns are the main tool automakers use to sustain buyer interest and justify their pricing.
Oh, I see. So if the car looks exactly the same as it did a half-decade ago, no one wants to pay a premium for it.
Exactly. When you starve that pipeline, you leave your dealers with aging, uncompetitive inventory. The Cox analysis actually notes that hybrids are suddenly gaining immense strategic importance as a permanent fixture, rather than just a bridge technology.
Because they need something to sell.
Yes. Automakers just need something fresh that consumers actually want.
I do find it frustrating that while the Cox Automotive Analysis teases a brand survival index to measure how companies are weathering the storm, they don't actually reveal which specific brands are surviving the best.
Yeah, they leave that part out.
But, we don't really need their index to see the damage. We can just look at hard sales data. The numbers coming out of Ford, for example, show consumers actively punishing this premature pivot.
The sales data paints a very clear picture of that punishment. Ford saw its overall sales volume fall by 10.3%, moving about 549,200 vehicles.
That's a huge drop.
And it's not just them. General Motors also experienced a drop, seeing a 4.2% decline as overall EV demand weakened.
Now, to be fair to Ford, their F-Series trucks dropped 11%. But the data indicates that was at least partially due to an aluminum supplier fire that disrupted production.
Right. That's a physical supply chain issue.
Yeah, so that specific drop isn't purely a demand issue. But the number that really stopped me in my tracks, like the truly memorable detail here, is what happened to Ford's electric vehicles. Their all-electric vehicle sales plummeted by exactly 40.7%.
That is a staggering plunge. I mean, for a product line that was supposed to represent the entire future of the company.
Exactly.
The core implication there is that the market is performing much better in areas automakers did not prioritize heavily enough. Because all that capital went toward the EV head fake, these companies are scrambling to adjust their factory output to match what you, the consumer, actually want to drive off the lot.
Right. And what the sales data does not answer, unfortunately, is whether this 30.7% drop is the absolute bottom or if electric vehicle demand is going to continue to slide in the next reporting period.
That is the big unknown.
It is. And it brings us to a much heavier question. If a company spent billions outfitting a massive factory to build electric cars that nobody is buying, well, someone has to absorb that loss.
They absolutely do.
So where is the physical human impact of this miscalculation hitting the hardest?
It is hitting the factory floors in Europe. Industry reporting on Volkswagen's restructuring efforts reveals a company in crisis. I mean, they are getting battered by weaker overall demand, the constant threat of tariffs, and aggressive competition from Chinese automakers.
Just getting squeezed from all sides.
Exactly. The financial weight of the electric transition is so heavy that management is pushing for a sweeping restructuring plan that, quite frankly, threatens the national manufacturing identity of Germany itself.
Okay, I have seen corporate restructuring plans before. Usually it means, trimming middle management or cutting a shift at one plant. How severe is this Volkswagen proposal?
It goes far beyond trimming the margins. The reported scale is unprecedented. The proposal involves potentially closing 4 German factories.
4 whole factories?
Yeah, specifically plants in Hanover, Zwickau, Emden, and Audi's facility in Neckarsulm. And the human cost is massive. They are looking at eliminating up to 100,000 jobs.
Wait, 100,000 jobs?
Yes, which is double their previous restructuring target.
I struggle to even wrap my head around that number. That is not just a corporate layoff. That is a localized economic earthquake.
Yeah.
I assume the German unions are not just taking this quietly.
Not at all. The IG Metall union and local politicians are fighting the proposal, quoting that they will resist with all our might.
I bet.
But the reason this is so fascinating is the mechanical structure of how Volkswagen is governed. Analyst Thomas Besson points out that implementing these cuts is, in his words, very complicated because of a piece of legislation known as the Volkswagen Law.
The Volkswagen Law. I'm not familiar with that. How does a law dictate a company's layoffs?
It has to do with voting rights. The state of Lower Saxony, which is where Volkswagen is headquartered, holds a 20% voting stake in the company.
Okay.
Under standard German corporate law, you usually need a 75% supermajority to pass massive strategic changes.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the Volkswagen Law basically codifies that 20% stake into an effective veto power over major boardroom decisions like factory closures.
Wait, so a regional government essentially holds a veto over a global automaker's survival strategy?
That is exactly the dynamic. You have management arguing that they must cut these costs to survive global competition and fund the EV transition.
Right, the business reality.
And on the other side, you have regional politicians who refuse to let the company hollow out their local manufacturing base. It is corporate strategy directly blocked by regional politics.
Now, I should point out a limitation in the reporting here. Volkswagen management has kept very quiet ahead of their supervisory board meetings, so they haven't officially confirmed that 100,000 job figure.
That's true. It is still a reported target, and it could shift.
But the mere fact that closing 4 German plants is even on the table shows how deep the structural pain goes.
It shows that legacy automakers are bleeding cash trying to shrink their traditional footprint.
Which brings up an incredible paradox. On one hand, automakers are fighting unions, facing factory closures, and desperately trying to cut costs.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they have absolutely no choice but to spend billions of dollars securing the high-tech, invisible components required for modern vehicles.
It's a massive contradiction.
It is. It's like trying to stream a 4K movie over a dial-up modem while your computer is on fire. How are they physically securing the tech inside these cars when they are struggling to keep the factories open?
They're doing it by fundamentally transforming their supply chains, basically treating modern vehicles less like mechanical machines and more like rolling supercomputers.
Rolling supercomputers.
Exactly. We can see the mechanics of this by looking at a strategic agreement between General Motors and Micron Technology. GM is locking in long-term memory supply for their next-generation platforms.
I'm going to stop you there because when I think of car parts, I think of, alternators and brake pads. Why does an automaker need a strategic partnership with a memory chip company? A chip is a chip, right?
Not anymore. Modern vehicles rely on highly specific types of memory. The GM and Micron deal focuses on securing DRAM, NAND flash, and LTDDR memory.
Okay, what does that actually mean for the car?
If we translate that, GRAM is basically the short-term high-speed memory. When your car's advanced driver assistance system needs to instantly recognize a pedestrian crossing the street, it uses DRAM to process that data in milliseconds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And NAND flash is the long-term storage. It holds the massive operating systems and the high-definition maps for your infotainment screen.
Okay, so if you don't have those specific high-end chips, you basically just have a very expensive metal box. You can't run a digital cockpit without them.
Precisely. And because memory prices are expected to stay elevated, GM is aligning early-on tech specs to guarantee their supply.
Makes sense.
The scale of the investment is what makes this memorable, though. Micron is pouring $2 billion into upgrading its Manassas, Virginia fabrication plant, specifically to localize this supply for automotive customers.
$2 billion for a single plant upgrade. That tells me GM is terrified of repeating the past. They're doing whatever it takes to avoid another catastrophic semiconductor shortage.
They are locking down the bleeding-edge hardware. Now, one open question regarding this agreement is that both GM and Micron kept their financial cards hidden.
What do you mean?
Well, they did not disclose the financial terms of the deal or the specific volume of chips GM is receiving, but it is undeniable proof of the immense capital still flowing into automotive tech, even as other parts of the business face severe cuts.
So automakers are spending billions to put supercomputers inside the cars. But what happens when that rolling supercomputer actually arrives at your local dealership? Like, how is the retail side of the business handling this massive technological leap?
This is where we hit a massive, almost comical digital divide. Yeah. A nationwide survey conducted by Carlton and analyzed by Tim Yalich exposes the reality of legacy lending platforms. The survey looked at banking, auto finance, and fintech professionals, and the findings show an absolute chasm between the high-tech cars being built and the dinosaur software being used to sell them.
Let me guess. You sit down in the finance office to buy your hyper-advanced, self-driving electric vehicle, and the finance manager is typing your credit score into a green screen terminal from 1998.
That is barely an exaggeration, honestly. Dealerships and lenders are heavily reliant on older legacy technology.
It's so frustrating as a buyer.
It is. The survey highlights that modernizing the process requires API connectivity and seamless third-party integrations.
Yeah.
But the actual delays in implementing new products or regulatory changes take 6 months or longer for many organizations.
6 months just to update a software process. Why is it taking so long?
Because of technical debt. Here's the most shocking statistic from the survey. While 76.5% of respondents say modernizing their systems is an urgent priority, 1/3 of respondents spend 80% to 100% of their technology resources just maintaining existing legacy systems.
Wait, let me make sure I am hearing that correctly. Up to 100% of their IT resources are spent just keeping the lights on.
All of their energy goes into basic maintenance. They have absolutely zero bandwidth left for actual innovation.
That is wild.
The implication here is severe. If dealers and lenders cannot modernize, they face mounting operational risks, compliance failures, and cybersecurity threats.
Yeah, not to mention the customer experience.
Exactly. From a consumer standpoint, it acts as a massive bottleneck. You have a frictionless digital car sold through a high-friction analog process that drags on for hours.
Now, I do want to note a limitation in this Carlton survey. The report leaves out the exact methodology. There is no sample size, margin of error, or fielding dates provided, so we have to take the precise percentages with a grain of salt.
Fair point.
But the underlying truth resonates with anyone who has ever bought a car. The finance office is a technological black hole.
It is the weakest link in the entire chain.
So we have covered a lot of ground here. We started with boardroom capital missteps, moved to the factory floors of Germany, looked at $2 billion chip deals, and ended up in the dealership finance office.
Quite the journey.
It really is. So how do we pull all these threads together? What is the actual pattern emerging from these sources?
When you look at the whole board, 3 clear themes emerge. First, there is a massive theme of capital misallocation. As we saw in the Cox automotive analysis and the Ford sales data, the aggressive push into EVs starved traditional vehicle pipelines of the resources they needed.
They placed all their chips on a future that hasn't arrived and basically neglected the present.
Exactly. The second theme is the structural pain of transition. Competing globally while funding this shift is causing severe friction on the factory floor.
Right, which is vividly illustrated by Volkswagen's battle with its unions and the regional government over potential plant closures.
Yes. And the third theme has to be that digital divide. You have GM and Micron signing multi-billion-dollar deals for advanced memory chips, contrasting sharply with the Carlton survey showing dealerships bogged down by archaic lending software.
Right. And those themes create 2 major defining tensions in the industry, don't they?
They do. The first tension is between investment and consumer demand. The industry poured funds into the EV head fake, but you, the consumer, are actually demanding hybrids and traditional redesigns.
The money went one direction and the buyers went the other.
Exactly. And the second tension is the clash between bleeding-edge tech and legacy retail. You are buying a supercomputer, but you have to finance it through a system that consumes all of a dealership's IT resources just to stay online.
So for the listener trying to make sense of this, what is the practical takeaway?
The bottom line takeaway is that flexibility is the ultimate currency.
Right.
The companies that survive this era will not be the ones with the most rigid, visionary 10-year plans.
It's about adapting.
Yes. The winners will be the companies that can pivot fastest to the immediate reality of consumer demand and technological bottlenecks. You have to be able to build a hybrid when the market suddenly demands it, and your dealers have to be able to finance it digitally without their systems crashing.
Flexibility over rigid vision. That makes perfect sense because the high-tech cars of tomorrow are trapped in a traffic jam caused by the supply chains and legacy software of yesterday.
That perfectly sums it up.
If you want a clear indicator of how this is all going to shake out, keep a very close eye on those factory floor battles in Germany. The friction happening there between management, labor, and regional politics is going to foreshadow the exact same struggles we will see globally as the heavy reality of this transition fully sets in.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for this segment of Auto News Talk. We will see you next time.